Okay, all right, good afternoon. We're progressing in our study of Chana from Shmuel Aleph, and we're up to her, we're just about up to her salvation, where Hashem answers her tefillah, and then today, B'ezrat Hashem, we will start also her tefillah of Thanksgiving, her shira, her song. So Eli comes to her and Eli says, Hasiri es yenayich me'alayich. Get sober, lady, right? This is just not right. And she answers him, Vatan Chana v'tomer, lo adoni ishak shat ruach anoifi. No, it's not. I'm just in a difficult place. I'm a hard woman, she says. Maybe what it means here is I'm a hardened woman. Like I've become hard from my life experience. And v'yayin v'shecher lo shatiti. I didn't drink anything. Now the question is, why did Eli believe her? Because that's what every addict says. I didn't drink, right? But I guess he had a good sense that she was kosher. But I'm davening in such an uninhibited way. There's my entire soul which is pouring out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Don't think that I'm an inappropriate person. But because of so much, I had so much to say. I had so much to unload. And my anger, I have spoken like this. So what Chana is saying here again, and we touched on this, and just to remind us to bring us back into focus, Chana teaches us how to pray. And Chana taught us a few things. She taught us, number one is that we want to daven like the drunk, like the person who's completely uninhibited. We want to have a consciousness that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Ein Sof, is endless, and that all possibilities are open, which is very vulnerable, because when you daven like that, when you're not drunk, right? And you know that you're opening yourself up for disappointment, okay? So it takes a tremendous amount of courage to be vulnerable, to daven for these things that maybe yes, maybe no. We started talking about last week, like everyone's in the Mashiach frenzy, and like, how do we know? And that's exactly it, right? When we were rudely interrupted by Nasrallah Yemach Shemo, who also interrupted our sleep Friday night. I woke up my granddaughters, who we couldn't get back to sleep for 2 hours. So Yemach Shemo, this is the outpouring of my soul. That's what this is. And what Chana is saying here is, I am so focused on my feelings right now and getting them out. And she even uses the word kaasi, my anger. Now, whenever we talk about kas, I think that there's a great misconception in the world about, is kas a positive thing? Is kas a negative thing? Right? So kas, in terms of, I'm sorry, if it's my son, who I haven't spoken to since Friday, I'm answering. Okay. So if Chana uses the word kas, and there's this great misconception, right? Kol hakois, kol minei gehenim sholtem bo. Right? A person who gets angry, all different kinds of hell rain upon him. Okay? That a person who's kol hakois kilu oved avodah zara, a person who gets angry, he's like he served idols, right? So kas kind of has this X on it, right? We're not supposed to get angry. Anger is bad, okay? But we know that that's not really true. Shlomo HaMelech teaches us in Sefer Mishlei, and in the Malbim's Hakdama to Sefer Mishlei, he says very clearly, the Malbim says, Shlomo HaMelech is teaching us in Sefer Mishlei, and this is what Sefer Mishlei is all about, that there is no midah which is bad or good. It's minun. It's how much, when and where, right? Kaas has its place. In fact, David HaMelech tells us in Tehillim, we read it every night before we go to sleep. Rigzu v'al techetou. Rigzu, rogez is even like a higher level of anger. Rogez is rage, right? I'm not sure exactly what the technical difference is between anger and rage, but rage is a much more intense form of anger. David HaMelech says, Rigzu, go into rage and don't sin. And the Chavetz Chaim explains, what does this mean, Rigzu? Why is David HaMelech telling us to go into rage? He says, we need to use kas the midah of anger, to rage at our Yetzer Hara, to rage at injustice, to rage at all the things that are really wrong, right? Because if a person doesn't get angry, what are they? Accepting things which should not be accepted, right? Acceptance is a great word, but there are some things which we shouldn't accept, right? We shouldn't accept our certain parts of our behavior, not ourselves. We accept ourselves, but we want to get angry at certain types of behavior, perhaps. We want to get angry, if we said, you know what, and this is what, I don't mean to get political here, but the idea that I heard this interview from the head physician of Yoldot in Soroka, and she was describing how on October 7th, what happened in the maternity ward, with labor, with birth, like how difficult it was, and how the effects that she thinks it had on the women giving birth and on the babies. It was a very, very interesting interview. So she says at one point, she says that I understood immediately that this was not just a normal attack. And then she said, that's a crazy thing to say. And she even used the word in Hebrew, it was in Hebrew, oxymoron. I was like, wow, soon there's going to be no Hebrew left. If they brought in oxymoron is now a word, then, Some of them were from the Moshe, some were just there, and she was talking about what happened in real time in the maternity ward when they're hearing all these sirens. A woman is in the middle of giving birth, right? She's trying to nurse her baby, her newborn baby, like what was, in labor, how it affected what was going on there. And obviously they're concerned about their families back home that they left, and it was, very, very intense. And also they were afraid they were going to get attacked as well. Okay, so, moving them in and out, like they had to keep moving the babies into the mamad, out of the mamad, in the mamad, what they did with the NICU, like it was, it was very, very crazy. So she said, though, the point was not the story. The point is that she said, she's in the middle of the interview and she says, I understand that we understood immediately that this was not a normal attack. And then she's like, what a crazy thing to say. Like, how did it become normal to be attacked on a constant basis? How did that become normal? Right? So where's the rage? Okay. So I see this in my line of work all the time, right? As a Toanet Rabbanit and as an advocate in the Beit Hadin, a Toanet Rabbanit. It's like a lawyer in the Beit Hadin, in the rabbinical court. I see a woman who's gotten so, and I also see men, by the way, for every abusive woman, there's an abusive man. It's equal, okay? It's really, there's equality in the world in that. I really believe that. But because there's balance in the world. But, you meet a woman who, to her, it's normal. This is normal. So until he crosses a certain line, which is like, what? Like, what kind of line is that? Like, it has become normal. I accept that this is how I should be treated. I accept that this is what love is. Love means hurting somebody, okay? Very sad when you see that with children who grow up to be adolescents, who grow up to hurt other people because they believe that hurting people is actually love, okay? Their brains are completely miswired. And this is why anger is a good thing when it's used in the right place in the right time, okay? Because there are certain behaviors which we have to be angry about. We cannot accept them, okay? We cannot accept them as something, someone is being hurt, right? What are we so upset about? Angry at the world right now, angry at all the women's organization, angry at all the children's organizations, angry at the Red Cross right now. Why? Because if we wouldn't be angry at them, what would that be? Agreeing with them, complacency. And again, we always have this scale of what's adif, what's preferable. And almost any emotion is preferable than adishut, than not feeling, okay? Than being indifferent. And the Gemara is actually a halacha in Maseches Brachot, okay? Now, I'm not saying halacha l'maisa what to do. I'm just telling you over what it says in the Gemara, okay? If you're davening Shemona Esrei, God forbid, and a snake comes into the room, right? So you're not supposed to stop davening. You're supposed to stay in place and keep on davening. Okay. Now, between you and me, one of my biggest fears in life is snakes. Okay. I live on the top floor. I used to have a garden apartment and I had snakes and that was it. I'm finished. No more. I will not have a garden anymore. But believe that in maybe when I retire. Or get over my fear of snakes. So snakes are the dentist by me, right? I hate snakes. But the halacha is that you're supposed to not stop davening Shemona Esrei. Okay? That's what the Gemara says. The halacha l'maisa, I'm not telling you the halacha l'maisa is because I personally, if I saw a snake, I would stop Shemona Esrei. I would scream. I probably would. You would hear me. It would be louder than the azaka. But the Gemara says, if a scorpion, if you're davening, God forbid, davening Shemona Esrei, and there's a scorpion that comes, you right away stop and you take preventative measures to kill the scorpion or get away. Okay. Now, not all scorpions are poisonous. Not all snakes are poisonous. So, what's the difference? Why is a snake okay? So the Gemara explains the venom of a snake is hot. The venom of an akrav, you hear the word tar, cold in it, is cold. What that, again, I don't know if this is halacha lemaisa, but the theory, the more, I'm not sure if it's the more Kabbalistic interpretation, the more Agadita interpretation of this would be that being excited about something, being idealistic about something, even if it's the wrong ideology, it's okay. Why is it okay? Because a person could easily transfer that passion or that ideology, exchange it for the correct one, for the correct passion. But somebody who's turned off, somebody who's cold, somebody who's indifferent, that's symbolized by that krav, right? Who has the cold venom. There's no cure for that. There's no cure for that. So you have to take every preventative measure not to turn off the emotional faucet. And that's really hard. Okay? That's really hard. It's very, very hard because it's much easier sometimes to say, I'm not going to let myself get angry, right? Because we want to stay in control, and anger to a certain extent is losing control. Bad anger is trying to take control of the situation by losing control of the situation with anger. But real anger is admitting I'm not in control of the situation, and now I need to do something, and I don't know maybe what I need to do, but I'm not in control. It's an acknowledgement of being I'm not in control, and this is not okay. So it's two opposites of the same coin. So Chana here comes and she says, she said, and we see from Chana that sometimes davening needs to come from a place of good anger. Okay, of good anger. I was at Levaya yesterday for a fallen soldier. I'm still wet. My shoes are still wet. I'm still cold and wet from it emotionally. A family, Olim that live in Beit Shemesh, the boy Benjamin Ben Rachel, Zichrono Levracha, he learned with one of my boys in yeshiva. He learned here in Tzfat. All of a sudden, I heard they called Rav Eliyahu to give a hesped and the Rosh of the yeshiva. I'm like, oh, I could have gotten a ride. You learned also in Tzfat here and also in Eilat and Eastern in Tzfat. And one of the things the father said, he quoted Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, who said, would you want a God that you understood? Would you want a God that you understood? Meaning, if I could understand God and understand all his ways, would I want that kind of God? I like it was an amazing thing to say. It was amazing. These people are, really incredible. And so to get angry is not a bad thing. It depends how, when, why, and where. And this is another thing that we learn from Chana. Sometimes prayer needs to be fueled by anger. And more than that, on a deeper level, sometimes prayer always needs to be fueled by real feelings. Okay? The danger is the akrav. Okay? The nachash is sometimes dangerous, sometimes not, but it's more curable than the scorpion. Just a funny story. My oldest son, when he was in his regular army service, Sadir. So he calls me up one day and he goes, oh, Mommy, I'm in the hospital. I got bitten by a scorpion, a yellow scorpion, which is poisonous. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, where are you? He's like, I'm in a fula in the hospital. I'm like, okay, I'm coming. He goes, don't bother. Are you kidding? This is the best thing that ever happened to me. It was Shavua Shetach. They were in the they're in the field for a week where they're not allowed to take off their boots, not allowed to change their socks, not like, you can't imagine what that smells like when they come home to do their laundry. But he's like, I got to take a shower. I got to take off my boots. I'm on vacation. I'm enjoying. Everything is great. Unfortunately, I mean, for him, they made him go back to the shetach after a few hours. They didn't give him 12 hours out. He was like, I got to shower during the Shavua Shetach. Okay, so we want to stay away from the scorpion because the scorpion is cold. We need to stay away from anti-shoot. So fear is better than indifference, okay? Basically, any emotion is better than turning off the faucet of emotion. Okay, fine. So then, Vayan Eli and Eli answers her, Vayomer l'chile shalom, go in peace. And here also is something very, very beautiful that we learn, l'shalom. When we bless somebody, they should go or come, l'shalom, not bishalom. Bishalom is what we say to somebody when they're in their final resting place, when at a burial. Lishalom is moving forward, la'atid, in the future should be peace. Bishalom is you are now at peace. Okay, so we always want to wish somebody lishalom. Velokei Yisrael yitain es shelasech. Lishalom. Tachzor lishalom. Come back lishalom. Okay. No, lamed. Lishalom. Lamed. To peace, meaning you should always be going forward towards peace.
But when you're returning, you're still in movement. So wouldn't it be bishalom?
Lishalom. Bishalom means you are at peace. Right. Lachzor is a different word, right? We're talking about shalom. The word that we're here, we're accenting is peace. Is what? Maybe I don't. That's a good point. I don't know what to say about that. But l'chile shalom is what we wish to somebody. They should always be going in shalom, perpetual peace. And may God grant your request, asher sha'alti mi'imo, which you asked from him. And here becomes the starting of the name Shmuel. Vatomer timtza shifchatecha chen be'einecha, may your maidservant find favor in your eyes. Vatelech ha'isha ledarka, and she went on her way. Vatoichal, and she ate. Remember, she didn't want to eat before, right? She couldn't get the food down her mouth. Upaneha lo hayu la'od, and she had none of that sour face anymore. Now, I find this pasuk, which seems to be just the bridge pasuk of telling the story, to actually be an incredibly important pasuk. Chana finishes her prayer. She finishes her exchange with Eli. He gives her a blessing, and she goes on her way, and she eats, and her face is no longer fallen. And what this is showing us is incredible message. Chana did her hishtadlut. She did her absolute everything she could. She prayed from her whole heart. She prayed in a way which she had never prayed before, which no human had ever prayed before. Okay, and that's it. So it's not about whether I get what I asked for or not. Okay, it's about the new relationship that I have formed with Hashem through this tefillah. Every time we daven for something, right? It's not about necessarily getting what we want. Of course, we address that a person is allowed to ask for their wants and their needs, and that's a good thing because it's coming from within their soul. Their soul needs it also. It's something specific to them, perhaps. If somebody, even Rabbi Nachman writes this, we didn't mention this, but Rabbi Nachman writes that if you're very, very jealous of somebody, of something very specific of somebody, right? You're very jealous of their house or their car or their career or their, I don't know, that they're a size 4, whatever it is that you're like crazy, obsessively jealous of somebody else, it could be that you had that in a previous Gilgul and your soul is missing it and identifies with and it wants it because it's used to it. Okay, and he writes that even with souls, like if you're jealous of somebody's husband, like obsessively jealous, it could be that you were actually married in the previous Gilgal, which contradicts many other things, which talks about Gilgulim, but I don't know anything about Gilgulim, so don't ask. No one had ever davened the way that she davened, with her completely uninhibited talk to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and nobody had reached her level in prayer, which is the reflection of the soul talking. I'm pouring my soul out. So the soul is not something which could be heard, which could be seen, but my lips are moving because it's emanating from within me. Chana, and that's why we learned the halachot of tefillah from Chana, because she was the master of prayer. So, I mean, their prayers, I'm sure, were unique also, but Chana was a new modality of prayer, a completely new modality of how to pray. So here, and that's it. She goes and her face is no longer fallen. So it's not about getting my needs or my wants met, but the tefillah itself was an experience enough that I'm ready to move on now. Okay, I have a different perspective. I've been comforted. I've been healed somewhat. I'm moving on. And that's an incredible thing, right? Because, in my mind, okay, if you get it, you don't get it. Like, let's wait and see, right? Like, I asked for something. I beg Hashem for something. So if I get it, yofli. And if not, like, well, maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day, maybe the next day. And the idea is, wait a second. The idea of tefillah is, again, a kesher, this incredible ptil, this bond between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's not only about getting our needs, it's more about connection and consciousness. So once Chana gets that incredible connection and consciousness that she gets here, she's ready to move on. And therefore, she doesn't need to keep repeating her prayer again and again and again. And this is it's reflective also in a very beautiful story. I'm not sure if I shared this with you or not. If I did, just tell me and we'll fast forward. In Maseches Brachot, which a lot of the davening, Maseches Brachot talks a lot about davening. So on Daf Gimel, it has a story. And this is one of my favorite stories about Rav Shimon Bar Chalafta. Rav Shimon Bar Chalafta is the son of Abba Chalafta. He's buried 20 minutes from Tzfat. What? Yes, Tomat Chananya. Yeah, right there. With a whole bunch of, on the other side of the highway is a whole bunch of other very important kfarmim, Tayat Tzav, etc. Rabbi Chananya ben Akashia. They're all, it's like this junction, which maybe at one point was actually just one big cemetery, who knows? Because you have some Tanaim on this side and some Tanaim on that side. In any event, so Rabbi Shimon Bar Chalafta, after the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, was one time traveling, and he sees that he needs to daven mincha. But he's in a quandary because he doesn't know what to do. If he davens mincha, he reports to his colleagues, if I daven mincha on the main highway, what if somebody passes by? I have an obligation to greet him. But I'm going to be in the middle of davening. I'm forbidden to greet somebody when I'm talking to the king, but I have to greet him because heavy makdim is called Mishalom. We have to greet somebody, which is just think for a second about how important it is to greet somebody. Whenever I hear the story, read over the story, think about the story, I remind myself how important it is to greet somebody, because I feel like that's like it's a little bit of a lost art. Something I know that I need to work on, remembering to say hello, see somebody, you say hello to them, and not just hello, but give them, a welcome. Definitely something I need to work on. So there's a halakha, you're supposed to be maktim shalom. You're supposed to be the first one to initiate greetings to somebody, right? Which is, we know on Shabbos, I think we do it a lot. We say Shabbat Shalom, good Shabbos to anybody we see, but it's also talking about the weekday too. There's something beautiful in Tzfat. Everybody says Shabbat Shalom to everybody. Yeah. Something special about Tzfat. Okay, so I'll tell you the truth. When I lived I grew up in Chicago. Everybody said Shabbat Shalom to everybody. There was no, yes, no question. And you saw somebody else who was Jewish. It was like, oh, good Shabbos, Shabbat Shalom. Like you don't have to know them at all, But it was just so exciting to see somebody else who was religious. It was an instant connection. So he says, I don't know what am I supposed to do, right? What's the halacha? And then he sees off to the side there's this churva. A churva is like a half destroyed type of building. Okay, so he sees the churva and he says, great, I'll daven mincha in the churva. Now he davens mincha in the churva, and there's a part two to the story, but I'm not telling that. I'm just focused on one aspect of the story. He comes out of the churva, and who does he meet? Eliyahu Hanavi, right? Ezekiel. And he gives shalom to Eliyahu Hanavi, and Eliyahu Hanavi returns his shalom, he chzira shalom, and Eliyahu Hanavi says to him, what were you doing in that churva? And he says, well, I had this dilemma. I didn't know what to do. So I davened Shemona Esrei on the street because that's a risk. And then I saw the churva. I said, perfect. It's off to the side. No one's going to see me. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Chalaf reports, I learned 3 halachot from that conversation with Eliyahu Hanavi. Number 1, we don't daven in a churva. We don't go into a churva. Lo nichnasin lechurva. It's forbidden to go into a decrepit, dilapidating building. It's dangerous. We daven a short tefillah and on the road. Okay, those are the 3 halachos that we learned from Eliyahu Hanavi. Again, there's a part 2 to the story, which is very nice, but that's not our topic today. I can't remember the name of the parish. The Eitz Chaim. I think it's the Eitz Chaim. Something Eitz Chaim. Okay. I think it's the Eitz Chaim. Says that this is not just a simple story. This is not just halacha. There's a lot going on here. The Eitz Chaim says that Eliyahu Hanavi taught Rabbi Shimon Bar Chalafta, don't go into a churva. Don't go into why this was destroyed. Why Hashem did this. Why was this building destroyed? Don't go into it because you'll go crazy from it. Number 1. Number 2, daven a short tefillah on the road. Daven a short tefillah. Don't become obsessive about davening for anything. Okay? Put in your ishtadlus, daven for it, but don't daven all day for it. Okay? Don't stop your life and just daven, which is some days that's what I feel like doing right now. Just why are we working? Why are we doing anything? Why are we cooking? Why are we shopping? Let's just stop and daven. Eliyahu says no. You keep a short tefillah, and where do you do it? On the road. And I think it's the Eitz Chaim, but it doesn't sound. When you say a name, it's like no, it's not it. So it's driving me crazy. Okay. It's not the Eitz Chaim. The Eitz Chaim is the parish and this parish. I can't remember the name of the parish. So 1 second, let me just finish this thought because as it is, I'm already. And he says, and you on the derech, you keep putting one foot in front of the other, and you keep moving forward. And that's what Chana does here. What? No. After you're daven, you do your tefillah tzara. Let me make that clear. Yeah. You do your tefillah tzara, you do your short tefillah, you don't go into the chorva, you don't go into the why, because you're never going to get anything from it. You do your short davening and you put one foot in front of the other after the davening and just keep going forward and move forward. Wow. What did you want to say? Okay, all right, sorry. So, yeah. Kaveh el Hashem, Chazak. It doesn't, it says ask, it says hope. It says kaveh, hope, right? He's not, no one's saying here don't keep davening, right? But don't make it obsessive. That's an individual thing. When obsession, I mean the psychological definition of obsession, I think, is when it interferes with the functioning of your life, right? Now most people who have obsessions think that the obsession is their life, right? Which is, that's always with the same thing with addicts. The solution is the problem and the problem is the solution. It's all one. which is, that's when a person, but that's something, sometimes the person might not know that from themselves, only from outside feedback, right? And it's different, everybody has a different level, for some people right now, they're saying, the whole Sefer Tehillim every day, and they're doing Hafrashah Challah every day, and they're doing all these skulot that keep, circulating. And for some people, for them to literally open their Tehillim and space out, that's enough for them. So it's, every person is in a different place, and every person needs to do their stuff, their thing. There's no cut and paste in spirituality or prayer, and there's no cut and paste happening. Right? We can't plagiarize somebody else's prayer plan for ourselves because it's so different for each person. When is acceptance? What's the difference between acceptance and indifference? So sometimes, the ideology which we believe in, right? That everything is for the good. Sometimes it's just a cover up for me not to actually have to do any work or think, right? So I could use that also as, a tachposet, a costume, so to speak. Oh, gam zlatova, it's for the good, but really I'm supposed to take action here, right? And then there's the opposite. There's the person who overtakes action when they really have to say, okay, it's time to let go and let God. So every person is in such a different place, and we move from those different places throughout the day, right? And that's Rabbi Nachman talks about that. So how on earth are we supposed to know what to do, right? How do I know when I'm supposed to do ishtadlus, go into the davening, and when I'm not? And so Rabbi Nachman says the answer to that is to say Tehillim b'kfiyut every day, to have certain prakim that you say every day and b'kfiyut, consistently, and that's a segula to be able to know what to do in all these situations. Because sometimes the choice of between good versus good is harder than the choice of good versus evil, right? But sometimes the good versus good, if we pick the wrong good, which is hard to, like, what does that mean, the wrong good? But you all know what I mean, right? Like, let's say somebody, is, come and can you make, 30 portions of chicken for Shabbos, right? And that's a mitzvah, right? But that might not be your mitzvah. It might be, it might not be, right? Everyone is talking about, taking in Shabbos early, and then, which is it's a tremendous amounts of kedusha comes up when a person takes Shabbos early, but that might not be, the one size fits all for everybody, because more important than taking Shabbos in early is bringing Shabbos in b'simcha. So if taking Shabbos in early is bringing Shabbos in early versus bringing Shabbos in with joy. So if that's if a person is going to say, okay, I got to bring Shabbos 10 minutes early, got to bring Shabbos 10 minutes early, but it's going to be with pressure and it becomes a burden, and I'm going to make everybody in my family the Korban Shabbat, the Shabbos sacrifice, then what did I really gain by bringing Shabbat in 10 minutes early, right? So it's always a shikul, and there's some people who, they should push themselves and bring in Shabbat 10 minutes early. I'm trying to figure out why it's only 10 minutes early. What if we would just add 10 minutes onto Shabbat? Like it's still till 7 Shabbat, and it's much easier than Shabbat early. Can somebody invent that skula? We could. Yeah, I mean, it's much easier to keep our Beinu Tam than bringing Shabbos 5 minutes early. Okay, especially when Shabbos is really early. I don't know, maybe I should make it up, and if I put it in a nice, WhatsApp meme or whatever that's called, then it will become real, right? Because it looks real. Okay, so this is an incredible thing about Chana, that she actually lives what Eliyahu Hanavi told Rabbi Shimon Bar Chalafta. That's it. Don't keep asking why. Tefillah k'tzara al haderech, a short prayer, and keep putting one foot in front of the other. Keep moving forward. And I think there's no greater lesson right now that we need to learn also in our days, where we really have, I mean, it's a lot, Yeah.
Shepherd who faces generation. How do we know who would be my foolish mother, let's say, or a foolish Jew, or would we be another? It's very individual, but I don't want to act like father. It's nice to say, foolish mommy. Why did you cry more, pray more, or beg more? You care enough for your kids?
So I want to answer you, which my answer is really a non-answer, okay? I'm not denying that it's not such a good answer, but wow. But we Jewish women have to be very, very careful with our Jewish mother guilt, okay? Which is, I didn't do enough, I didn't make enough, I didn't pray enough, I didn't make enough food, right? When there's, we end up throwing half of it in the garbage, right? And even the cats don't want it. It's, we never do enough, okay? That voice of you never do, it's not enough, whether it's prayers, whether it's, why didn't you take I should have taken the child to this therapist. One of the most beautiful things that the mother of the fallen soldiers said yesterday is that between the time when they were told that he was murdered until things started settling down a little bit, she kept thinking that she wants to turn the clock back and what she would do differently. And then she said, you know what? I wouldn't do anything differently. I would leave it just the way it was, because the way it was perfect. So that voice of you didn't do enough usually comes, that's the voice of Paro, right? That's the voice of Mitzrayim. You don't work enough, you don't do enough, right? Go gather asking us to build impossible things, right? And what happened to those pyramids that we built? They collapsed, right? And then we rebuilt them and they then collapsed, and you're not do enough, do more, do more, do more. That's the voice of Paro, usually, okay? Now, but sometimes it's not. So how do we know when it's not, right? How do we know, well, maybe I should push myself a little bit more? And it's a question that I don't know what the answer is to that. The answer is to send that question up to Hashem and ask Hashem to give you guidance on that. Hashem, did I do enough? And the Rambam promises us in Hilchos Tshuva that the pasuk in Tehillim says, "Toiv v'yosher Hashem al kein yorech hatoim badarach." Hashem is good and Hashem is straight, and He teaches the sinners in His path. That the Rambam promises that somebody who asks Hashem with sincerity to help them do tshuva and fulfill their tikkun, their purpose in this world, Hashem will help them. And so we have to send, I think the only answer is to send, like, you can't even ask somebody, right? I mean, maybe you could, right? But I'm not sure it's a question to ask somebody. Like, what am I going to say? Did I pray enough for my children? Like, can you give me a dosage? Spiritual pharmacist of how much is, how many milligrams of prayer for this thing and for this? No one's going to answer that question, right? No one's going to answer that question. Some people cry easily, some people cry less. Some people need to turn off sometimes their emotional intensity in order for them or their families to survive, right? Okay, we cannot live such an intense life because we're going to harm people who need us uninhibited, right? And natural in that way. So I think the answer is to send it to Hashem, and that's Kove Hashem. Kaveh Hashem, Kaveh El Hashem, Chazak B'yamet Libecha V'Kaveh Hashem. What you were talking about from the end of 27, that hope to Hashem that He'll guide you and He'll bring you there. And when you're not sure again, when those voices come up again, did I do enough? Did I cry enough? Did I ask enough? Did I give enough tzedakah? Should I have pushed myself more? Remember, usually it's the voice of Paro, but Chazak v'yametz libecha. Isn't it interesting that he uses the same lashon that it talks about Paro? And Hashem v'yametz et leiv Paro. Hashem strengthened Paro's heart to keep pursuing his shtuyot. Now we're asking Hashem to strengthen our hearts, that I stop getting into the shtuyot of Paro, right? That I can leave that voice of never enough, not enough. Okay, that guilt and us, we Jewish women. We are experts at guilt. And that's the first thing we say in the confession. What's the first thing of the confession? Ashamnu. So we have Ashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu, Dibarnu, Dovi. Ashamnu means what? Well, the simple translation is we have made it desolate. We have made our hearts desolate. Okay? But that's not what it also means. Ashamnu, that we have taken upon ourselves excessive guilt. Ashamnu, bagadnu, we rebelled. Gazalnu, dibarnu, dofi. We are guilty. We rebelled against you. We stole. We spoke lashon hara. We spoke evil about somebody. Which one doesn't fit in? Ashamnu, we are guilty because it's talking about when a person takes on excessive guilt, and taking on excessive guilt is a sin. Yeah.
Also, when you start thinking like, oh, I could have done more, I should have done more, it's like giving you this illusion that you are somehow in control.
So true. So true.
And you're not like really facing, I am not in control anymore.
So true. That's what sometimes, the guilty feelings are. It's we think we're paying a tax. We have to punish ourselves. So we're going to pay this tax of feeling guilty, and somehow it absolves us from what we didn't do. When it's kind of just like a mind trick, which brings us to very low places, because there's a difference between charata, which is remorse, and guilt, asham. Someone who's guilty, it's like a brand. They are asham, they are guilty. Someone who has remorse, okay, is saying, I'm ready to move forward. Okay, and it's a big difference. And the step of tshuva, as the Rambam tells us, is harata, is remorse. And that's the step which helps us, okay, I'm ready to leave this behind and move this forward. We can't go back in time. We can't go back in time. So what are we going to do about it now? So maybe we didn't. Maybe we did daven enough. Maybe we didn't daven enough. What does it have to do with today? Today, I can decide how much I want to daven and how much I don't want to daven. And by the way, tefillot today for things we can, so to speak, go back in time. I'll tell you an amazing story. A friend of mine, she lives now in Yerushalayim. She's Moroccan. Both her parents were born in Morocco, and they immigrated to, I think, Toronto. And her husband's parents are Moroccan. They're very, very Moroccan. Okay, and her widowed aunt, elderly, very elderly, I think she was close to 90, elderly widowed aunt was visiting her. And she said to her, they were talking, and somehow they ended up talking about mikvah. And her aunt said, yeah, I went once before I got married, but I never went again. And my friend was like, really? Like, that means that her children were not born al pi tahara, al pi with purity, okay? Which there's many ways to fix it, by the way. I'll tell you, and remind me to tell you after this tshuva of Rav Moshe, which is an incredible tshuva, about fixing that. But she called the Rav, and she asked her Rav if she should try to convince her aunt to go to the mikveh, if there's such a thing. And the Rav said yes. If she goes to the mikveh now, it is a tikkun, it's a rectification for all of the years that she did not keep tahara, and her children, purity, family purity, and her children will receive that purity. Her grown children, talking about children who are in their late 50s. Okay, what? Retro. Tikkun retro. Okay, that they should tikkun retro. So she convinced her almost 90-year-old great aunt to go to the mikvah. So her aunt says, what am I going to go? Who's going to give me a hug when I come back? So her husband says, I'll give you a hug. And she was scared to go in. It took 3 balaniyot, 3 women to help her go into the mikvah and help her toivel. But she did it. And retro. Now, just a short story, a psak halacha of Rav Moshe. Somebody asked Rav Moshe, and I don't remember where this is, but I saw it myself with my own eyes in Igros Moshe, and I also learned it when I was studying to become a Tohanet Rabbanit. It's one of the Piskei Halacha that we learned. But someone asked Rav Moshe, their children were in Shidduchim. Should they have this wonderful suggestion for their daughter. The boy is a Bal Midot. He's, one second, we have guests. It's further north, Margaliot, Kiryat Shmona. I have my phone set to it because I like to know when it's on the way. Yeah. So they asked Rav Moshe, there's this boy who was suggested for them that he has excellent midos and he's very learned and he's really very special, wonderful boy, and they really would like him for their daughter, but the parents did not keep Taharat HaMishpacha. So what does Rav Moshe answer? He said, number one, you should always go with Midot Tovot. That's number one. We learned that from Eliezer, Avram, with good character traits. Good character traits, that's the first thing. Always go for someone with good character traits. He said, you should know that if he has such good character traits, then it must be that somehow his mother did keep Taharat HaMishpacha. And how does he explain it? He said, who knows, maybe the day before he was conceived, she went to the beach. It must, and he says it must be that if he has such good midot, that Hashem arranged it, that his mother was Toga, and that she was Tahara. She was B'Tahara. That's a tshuva from Rav Moshe. Isn't that amazing tshuva? Rav Moshe, Stam, if you're ever bored, just that Hashem arranged it. Okay. Hashem intended that this soul would be brought into the world through purity. So even his mother didn't know, and she had no idea what Taharat HaMishpacha was then. She doesn't know what mikveh is, but Hashem must have arranged it. That somehow she went to the beach, or she went, whatever it was, that she somehow had some kind of tahara. Because he said, if someone has such good character traits, such midot tovot, it must be something like that. It's a fascinating tshuva, right? What? Oh, you want to say something? Okay. Okay. So Chana goes back, and she becomes pregnant, and she has a son, and she names her son Shmuel Kimei Hashem Shi Altiv, because I asked him from Hashem. He was the one. This is the request. This is the embodiment of my request. And it was when Elkanah went up to sacrifice to Hashem and to fulfill his promises. Chana did not go up. So the first 2 years, Chana did not go up. She said to her husband, Ad yigamel hanar, until he'll be weaned. And then I will bring him myself. And I will see the face of Hashem, meaning I will encounter Hashem again in Shiloh in the Mishkan. And then Shmuel is going to be there for eternity. Because not only she'elativ means request. She'elativ also means I borrowed. Okay, so I borrowed him from Hashem. I have to return him. Usually we talk about returning at the end of 120 years. But here Chana has made a promise that she is going to dedicate him to be of service to Hashem all of his days. When is that going to start? When he's 3 years old, right? Which is incredible. Okay, that he's going to start doing this when he's 3 years old. Asi hatov beinecha, my wife, do as what's good in your eyes. Shvi ad gimalech, stay here, sit until you finish weaning him. Ach yakom Hashem es devaro, but make sure that you keep your word, right? A neder is and a shavua, an oath in the Torah, is a very, very, very serious thing, right? It's called kiyifalei. The word kiyifalei means a wonder, right? It's a wonder that a person could say something and bring something upon themselves. Meaning, the minute that somebody makes an oath, they have now created a new reality, okay? And that's a wonder that a person has so much power. If somebody makes an oath that they are never going to eat chocolate again, which I don't know why anyone would do such a thing, but theoretically, if they would do that, right, then now chocolate is forbidden to them, just like eating pork is forbidden to them. There's no difference, right? But what an amazing power that Hashem empowered us with, responsibility. And it's not just only for oaths, it's also for words. When a person speaks, they create reality. There's been so many studies on this in terms of labeling children. But when we speak, we create a reality. That's why we have to be so careful about the words we use in its heart, because there's so many words that have come into our society, which, when I was a kid, if we said a curse word, we had to put $1 in tzedakah, right? The list of those curse words included shut up, retard, and I'm thinking, gosh, I could be really rich if I find my kids every time they called one another, even said the word, retard or shut up, right? Those were considered curse words, right? So the way that we talk, and in today's society, the way that people talk is it's difficult, right? And Israelis, God bless them, I don't know if they don't speak English or they never looked up the words in the dictionary, but I hope they have no clue what they're saying. But sometimes, I have a friend who, when I'm telling you ultra Orthodox, I'm talking about like the really, really from, and she used the 4-letter word with him, and I'm like, where did you hear that word? She goes, doesn't it just mean shtuyot? I said, no, it doesn't mean shtuyot. It does not mean shtuyot. It's a curse word. You don't say those words. She goes, oh my goodness, everybody's using this word. I'm like, how did that word get into this society? I have no idea. But zeu, osmosis. Yes, yes, right, yes.
Even the Hebrew speaking to be used as kas rather than word.
What they're saying. So the Chazal actually tell us how careful we have to be with our words. Al tiftach pet l'satan. Don't open your mouth to the Satan. What does that mean? That when we say something, like something terrible is going to happen, God forbid, or we say, oh, this is never going to work, or things like that, we are actually opening up for that to become a reality. Hashem has empowered our speech with creating reality. It creates a mental reality, an emotional reality, and it actually can even create a physical reality, right? What is all this self-talk type of thing, right? The idea of self-talk is I'm creating a new reality for myself, okay? Why is verbal abuse such a terrible thing? Verbal abuse is such a terrible thing is because it creates a real reality for somebody where they really are, a horrible, evil, stupid person. So we didn't get there yet. We didn't get there yet. Oh, I believe because I spoke words of emuna, it built up emuna. When a person speaks words of din, they bring upon chalila, they bring upon themselves midat hadin, the judgment. When a person speaks words of chesed, they chesed yisovavenu. When a person speaks words of loving kindness, they bring loving kindness upon them. What we give out is what we get back. So Elkanah just warned Chana, be very, very, very careful with fulfilling your promise, right? Because you made that promise. By the way, one of the halachic reasons for a couple to get divorced is that if one of the couple does not keep their promises, children die. Okay, and therefore, that's what it says in the Gemara, that when a couple swears, and now I'm not talking about they say, oh my gosh, I swear to God, but like they make an official oath with the name of Hashem, and then they, the punishment is that a person's should never happen. Person's children are pass away young. So therefore, it is considered a legitimate ta'ana, a legitimate claim to say that, well, he or she makes promises, oaths to Hashem, which we're not ever supposed to make oaths to Hashem, okay? And a person is not supposed to like take a chumash and say, I swear in the name of God that I'm never going to eat chocolate again, okay? That was just an example, right? Yes. That's right. You say exactly. Ani matzir, I declare, not ani nishva. Ani nishva means I swear, it's taking an oath. And what are they holding? They're holding a Tanakh. That's a real oath. And if you're religious, you don't do that. You say ani matzir, I declare, or ani matzira. You're a girl.
You don't have to swear if you're a witness. And if you're a religious, you say everyone will swear.
I affirm, right? Nachon. So in Israel, you just say ani matzir. You don't in secular court and in it's a tatzir. It's called a declaration or an affirmation. It's all the same thing, but it's not. Nobody swears. In old time, they stopped doing that before. I mean, talking about 400 years ago, maybe even more than that. They stopped because it used to be that a witness had to, what Nikitas Chayfetz, they had to take an object of mitzvah, a chumash, a tanach, a tefillin, tzitzis, put their hand on it and say, I swear, right? We don't do that anymore because people don't keep their word. Okay, yeah.
So when they get divorced, it nullifies the oath of the one of the other.
It doesn't nullify the oath, but because they're no longer, I'll explain to you, because they're no longer one soul, right? They're two separate souls. Therefore, there's nothing collective here. So there's no collective punishment. If they're married, they're one soul, which means that they're one. A get is get kritus. The souls are completely disconnected, which means when Mashiach comes, those two people are not coming back together again, right? Because their souls were cut off. They were karet, means they completely cut off from each other. Yeah, right. When we talk about the punishment in general, karet, that's the soul being cut off from Hashem, but that doesn't actually exist. Rabbeinu Tam said that's a theory. It's something that could happen, but just like the Ben Sora Umorer, the rebellious child, which there never was, a Jew is never actually cut off from Hashem. Okay. So he reminds her that you have to keep the promise, okay, because this is very, very serious. And she remained and she continued and she weaned him until she weaned him. And then our time is up, but we didn't get to the Shira. Okay, we have next week. Okay,
Thank you so much.
Bravo. Wow.
thank you. Stop recording. Yes. Yes, we see.